Hello, everyone. It is once again measured response time. Once again, it's felt like way more than a week since our last recording, but last I checked, it has in fact only been 7 days since the last time. My name is Jeff, also known as Ysengrin, and I'm joined as always by Safer. Say hi, Safer.
Hi, Safer. How the fuck does time work?
It sure is a wild thing. What have you been up to in this last week or so?
Great question. Still recovering from sickness.
Mhm.
Um, and I think just trying to catch up back on some things here and there. And, we have the dev deadline, but honestly, it's been pretty chill. Like, that's kind of nice that
Nice.
I've, yeah, like
Yeah. My
it's chill. And I'm just like, oh yeah, we've done all of the work up front to make it so that we don't have to rush at the end. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's what you like to hear. Yeah, I spent my weekend. My wife went away to have a weekend away for Mother's Day, and so the weekend was a lot of me bare knuckling, holding on, and getting my mother came down to help, and then for a little bit saw some friends and stuff. But my daughter started not fully walking yet, but starting to want to walk with assistance, and so there's been a
Mm.
lot of trips to the park where I'm like doing the crouch for like 30 minutes at a time, walking around the park, which is more tiring than I thought it would be, but
How's
a
your
lot of
back
fun.
doing?
It's I for whatever reason I also decided this week I need to start going to the gym again, and so like my arms and
Okay.
my back and core like are all just like screaming at me, going, excuse you, sir. This is this is too much all at once." But I don't know. It's felt like being more fit. I think is it will be very much worth it. So
It is.
yeah.
It is.
And I will say, I've been going to my gym at work, and I'm like, oh, having a real gym with all this equipment, much nicer than like doing it in my living room floor with like whatever weights I can scrounge. So
That is also very real. Like we
yeah.
we have a gym in our apartment, and like it's it's like the one like apartment amenity thing that I think is actually worthwhile, assuming that it's not like a bad gym.
Yeah, like
You
if it's
know?
a real, like an actual space rather than just like, oh, we couldn't quite do something with this room, and it's got one window and enough room for like two machines, so we'll call that a gym.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Like having like it's not even like an amazingly nice gym, right? It's just like a acceptable, decent has 3 treadmills and like 2 ellipticals or something. I do not use the ellipticals. But
Yeah.
it has like a squat rack and weights and like a couple other things. But really it's just like, yeah, I can lift weights and there's enough space to like do cardio, and
Yeah.
it's very convenient when you can wake up, like literally go down stairs. And also it's really convenient because our gym is like close enough to my apartment so I can still get Wi-Fi. So I just play video games on the
That's
treadmill in the
nice.
morning.
I
Yeah.
oh, part of the reason I started was like, oh, I it's getting hotter out and I bike to work, and it's only like a 15-minute bike ride, but I'm a relatively sweaty guy, and so like I'm sweating by the time I show up at work.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I'll just like go to the gym and use their bathroom, like use the gym locker room and stuff, and that'll be great. And I was like, you know what? You never quite know what's going to be in there, so I'll pack, a hand towel because like biking with that, it's like I'm already biking with a change of clothes, and adding a full towel is like a significant amount of weight at a certain point, where it's like a
True. True.
laptop
True.
and
True.
a whole outfit and a towel, and it's just like, we don't have particularly light towels, so I'll go with like a hand towel. Ah, shoot, they don't have towels. Oh, they also don't have soap in the shower. Let me quickly put some clothes back on, get some like hand soap, and just try and do the like fastest shower of my life kind of thing. Um, the next day, or not the next day, I go to the gym. I get the towel out, put it next to my backpack, and it never makes it in. And
Oh.
so I do
Oh.
the like, all right, I'm gonna grab a bunch of paper towels, and that's gonna be my solution for this. So it's been a fun set of adventures. Maybe I'll finally get it right on Friday. So we'll see.
I thought you were gonna say that like you end up you're already sweaty by the time you get to work. So you're just like, I'm just gonna work out.
I mean, that was my philosophy. So that was like I'm sweaty, I'll work out, and then I'll shower. And then I discovered that the
Yeah.
showers at this gym have no amenities at all, which is kind of wild.
That's really rough. That's really, really rough.
But anyway, we've now done like a 5 minute preamble on gyms and showering, so we should probably talk about what people are here for. Uh,
I guess we can talk about Netrunner.
Um, so it's going to be almost entirely either pre-written or pre-recorded questions. And if you want to submit a question for Measured Response, the best way to do so is to go to the Measured Response Discord. The link is in the description for however you're getting this content. And there will be a thread for this week, for that particular week's episode. And you can throw it in there, and you can ideally leave a voice memo, which is how we're going to have a couple of those today, or a little microphone react to say that you're happy to come on for a live take. Those are always a lot of fun too. Though we'll take, if you want to just type something out, that's pretty good too. We've got a couple of those today. We will check other places, but I'm not always the best about remembering to go to the YouTube comments, so definitely worth going to the Discord when you can. Our first question today comes from McCaber, and it's, you're in the cut and your opponent hands you their deck list before the match. How do you go about reading it? What sort of things do you look for? What notes are helpful to take?
I really like this question.
Yeah, I think this is a great question because it's like, oh yeah, I have a list of things I look for, but it's been a while since I've been in a cut where I've shared a deck list. And then, I think it's also like what you look for depends a lot on how known the meta is a little bit. So like my initial thought would be like, oh yeah, you look for X, Y, and Z, assuming that you know the entirety of the other player's strategy, which might not always be the case.
Yeah, I kind of need to break this down into like, is it an archetype that you're familiar with or that you know, or is generally known, or is it like kind of a brand new concept to you? And something can be like incredibly meta, but still be new to you. Like it's if someone's playing like a really versatile identity, like an obelisk or something like that. There's a lot of different like flavors that or like spices that they could have, and I think those are like much harder to read than, I don't know, like a old school like Rush PD list or something where you're just kind of looking at like what are the nuanced like tech choices. I also think there's actually a slightly different process for digesting a runner versus a corp list.
Yeah. So I will say like it probably makes most sense to start with runner because I actually think that one is the most similar kind of across the board. Like I
agree.
Whether or not you know the runner list, probably the most important, like if you're familiar with the game plan of the runner, the most important things I would actually start with almost always, assuming is like what icebreakers do they have, because if you're playing any amount of ice, that matters quite a bit, and you'll know which of your ice is going to be more impactful or less impactful, more annoying to break or less annoying to break. The next thing I would probably look at is trying to actually decide which the next thing really is like, how is their deck making money and how quickly can they make that money? So like, are they on a companion inevitability engine? Are they on, like you can think of all the different engines. There's been a lot of different ones in Netrunner's history, but like how are they going to make a lot of money? The last thing I would look at is probably like, what does their multi-access plan look like? Because that can tell you what servers are like particularly important to defend. Like, there's been times where it's like, oh, I'm up against Shaper player. Literally, HQ doesn't matter. Like, I should never be icing HQ because they have no way of making me care about it. And that's like to me, that's like the things I would look for in most runner decks. There's obviously nuances based on your deck, but that would be kind of my like high level thoughts.
Yeah, I think that I'm kind of coming at it from like a holistic approach where I think I would want to look at the win condition first, which could be multi-axis or it could just be like deck style, like the general shape of the deck. because I would understand like what is my opponent trying to accomplish with this deck. And that's usually going to start in like the win condition. So, is it a shaper list with like 2 deep dives and that's the entirety of their multi-access? Okay, now I can start looking at breakers and like the economy engine and see like how they plan on reaching that like goal. But a lot of times I'm like, I want to know like what their general game plan is, because that will help dictate like the pace in which you can and cannot play at. And then like it's okay, what are the icebreakers and how do they match up into my particular ice? What servers do I think that they're going to try to contest the most, and where do I think like which one is my most impactful like set of ice, and like which servers are they the most important to go on?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's, maybe I'm coming at it a little bit from the school of thought, like, runners are almost always control, so, like, who needs a win condition? But that's actually not
I mean,
how. That's not so true that you shouldn't look at the win conditions first.
it's
So
like,
that's fair.
but like the thing is, even when it is true, you want to know like the range of
Yeah.
how much like their
Yeah,
control
yeah.
is, because like no win con,
Hmm.
like true like loss con runner, um, like you're expecting a specific shape of economy package and icebreakers and everything like for that, and like okay, we know the game's going to be about like remote camping and they're not going to touch centrals like that much.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and that tells
Versus,
you how you should be placing ice versus, like, oh yeah, this criminal deck has Awaken Plant, so
yeah,
I want to make sure that I save a taxing ice to go on HQ rather than just being like, oh, I'll put in an ablative barrier on HQ, and that's like the only thing that
yeah.
needs to be
Or,
there.
or something as simple as like 120 versus 220 in
Yeah.
either Shaper or in Anarch. Like, you know, maybe you're on a tag list, maybe you have some like sort of incidental damage, something like that. Like I think it's really important to know the quantities of your opponent's like important cards, because throughout the matchup you should be expecting like, okay, I know that they're on 3 transfer, or I know that they're on exactly two deep dive, or maybe it's only 1 deep dive, right? They have, okay, they're playing 3 simul chips and there's no way of recurring the simul chips. I should be counting the simul chips, and you know I like their only way of dealing with propeller is brand, so like we know that we could potentially tax out propellers and all that stuff. Like, I think that it's like this is such an interesting question, because realistically, it's always going to be matchup specific, but I think it's like it's almost like less about like the cards they choose to include in their deck, and it's more about like the quantities of those cards, in my opinion.
I don't know that I completely agree. I mean, like, I think it's like there are some of these key cards where it's like, yeah, deep dive, transfer. Like, are they running a finite break package, or if they're not running a finite break package, does their what does their economy support for these breakers look like? Do they have an functionally infinite economy? Do they have a slow infinite? Do they not have? Do they have an actually fairly finite economy? Like, those questions matter. I think it's hard for me to be able to say, like, oh yeah, you can look at those, and if you're not fully sure what the meta looks like, that you'll be able to evaluate those quickly and easily.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I think you're right that, like, looking for multi-access so you understand the style the runner is going to play is like is probably the correct thing to do first. The next thing I would probably look at is like, how does my ice line up to their breakers? So can I tax them out of a breaker? Like, are they running revolver or propeller, things like that? Or which of my ice has the like best res to break ratio, so that I could and then do that, like, okay, knowing their win condition, knowing my win condition, knowing what ice is good in this matchup, where should I be prioritizing putting my ice? Because I think something that like separate like the good players from the best players can be making decisions like, yeah, this ice is good and I have a problem on this server, but if I that's not the server the game is going to be about, and so I should save that good ice for the correct server for later in the game. I think of like when I
Right.
when Patrick was like having us like explaining how to play
Yep.
PD, like there was so much of like, I would go, oh, that's your bet. Like that ice is great in this matchup, and you have a problem on R&D. You put it on R&D. It's like, no, that's for the remote. Like I need that there to win the game eventually. R&D is not that, like, even though it's a problem this turn, it's not a problem in 4 turns, and so we have to play for that kind of length of game.
Yeah. Yep. So on the corp side, when you're
When
looking
you're playing
at
runner, reading a
oh,
corp
sorry, when you're
list.
playing runner, yeah, that one, that that side. Um, I kind of think of it in a similar way of like I want to understand the corp's game plan, right, and what they're trying to achieve, and then look at their supporting pieces for how they plan to get there. And
Sorry.
I think that then the point is still all about like then the point is still about the ice and doing that same like icebreaker calculation, but from the other side of the table. And I think it's interesting context like that when you have a set of expectations about what you expect someone to play as, or expect a matchup to play out. You can then actually read even further into like the micro decision making that happens. So example, like we were talking about, you know, a specific ice going onto servers like that are important. If you're like, oh, the brands are the most important ice in this matchup, and then you run R&D and you see that they've put a brand there, there's like additional information that you can gather from that. And I think that that is like that happens in the moment because you're reading their deck list and you've read like I think these are the kinds of things that you want to be thinking about while reading the deck list.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think like it's one of those funny things where like I know what you mean there. I think it wasn't maybe said super well, and like it's actually a little annoying to explain like all of the different things like that can
Yeah,
mean
it's
because
really
it
hard.
is so contextual and so dependent on a specific matchup. So like, at some point maybe somebody could be like, hey, this was the thing I like. I would be interested if at some point someone wants to go like, oh, in my mega city, I made the top cut, and my opponent presented me with this deck list, and I was playing this.
Yeah.
What would you have looked for? I think that would be a fun thing to go back and do sometime.
It's also hard to explain, I think, because we definitely need a specific example. But then you also in some ways want like I think we could just do like a full extreme on like this kind of like a single example because you were mentioning like Patrick Random Appliances like PD list. And I think you and I were actually playing Leo about a year ago where we were having very similar conversations about like specific ice placement. And I think that it was like Sable versus Elio.
Mm-hmm.
Before Elio got like popular. And before some bands came through. And I'm like, if we could like go back and find like basically talk about that specific matchup, but even then it would require that people were like familiar with those LEO lists or like the Sable
Yeah.
lists and like
Yeah, it's
kind
also
of
just
played
like,
them a
oh,
little
that's
bit.
a
So
particular like, oh yeah, Leo like a style of Glacier versus a style of Reg Runner, but
exactly.
there's other styles of Glacier, other styles of Reg Runner, and then also the whole web of other things. It's like, oh, this how you look at things is very different. Like I think the other thing I would look at when I look at the deck list, and this is like a thing where I'm like, oh, if I'm like, up against an asset deck or a kill deck or like even like a reg deck, a reg corp deck, I go, what cards can sit in the remote and I don't care. Like,
That's a good one.
because like that, I think something I've seen a lot, and this is like one of the big things. Like I'm going to bring back one of my other favorite dead horses of like the Alco meta is like I would see people like throw like their whole hand away to like go and attack a foot behind a piece of ice with nothing else on the board, and it was like this idea like understanding which cards represent immediate threats versus long-term threats and how your deck is designed to deal with those different speeds of threat, I think is pretty important. And like when you're looking at a Glacier list or whatever, it's like, oh, again, going back to the card counting, like, if a card is unadvanced, how likely is it that they're going to score a 4-2 or a 5-3? How likely is it that they're going to fire, a humanoid resources? Can I afford to let them fire humanoid resources? Can I afford to let them fire a antil excavation contract? Like, those are probably some of the higher value cards. Like, do I care if there's a wall to wall that sits in that server for 3 turns? Because that will tell you how much you need to care about an uniced or an unadvanced card behind one piece of ice in the first 3 turns. Because I think that's like one of the things where it's very easy to go wrong in both directions. And so figuring out what the threats can be, I think, is a big one.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to the next question?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say also when you know the deck intimately, like if it's like 2 very familiar archetypes, the biggest thing to look for then really is going to be the card counts or like unusual includes, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, they optimized, they swapped out this piece of ice for that piece of ice. How is that going to affect the matchup? Where does that make it harder? Where does that make it easier for me? And that could be interesting.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I have one other thought, which is look at number of ice in deck and number of agendas. That's also really helpful. Like, if you're familiar with the matchups, then that can also tell you a lot. But even without it, just like if someone is playing 13 ice in a PD list or something like that, you're like, okay, you might be a little bit ice light, and that might actually, if you're I don't know, like 13 ice, like a 13 ice deck, you probably know that you will have more readily access to like archives or something like that.
Yeah. You can play for stronger central, like a game plan that's more around hitting centrals against a 13 ice PD.
Yeah. All right. Maybe we'll get like a specific example in the future. Maybe there'll be like a modern matchup that we like get super obsessed with, like Alco.
Yeah. At some point, I'd love to be. I feel like I need to get something for like people to submit something and we can talk about either deck lists or matchups or something. So I'll think about that. But
all right. So Cole Lava asked, it was their friend who said this and then they really agreed with it, so they're bringing it up. So Zing quotations marks, I'm assuming from the friend, but also Kolava agrees. So maybe not the hottest of takes, but they didn't like the timeline constraint section of the previous ban list article. It felt self-inflicted, and in retrospect it feels like aligning updates to segments of the competitive season was just the wrong way to schedule these updates. I was quite sad to see VP come out, a new ban list barely a month and a half afterwards, a new ban list after the VP coming out a month and a half afterwards. The timing was so soon that the previous change that it felt like a emergency update, and it didn't feel like VP had been given the room to breathe and naturally develop a meta. Moving along. I guess there's no question here, but I guess it's just like a, what do we?
Yeah, I guess I mean, probably the question is like, do you think it would make more sense in the future to align ban lists with set releases rather than with the competitive season?
But you know, there's another document I definitely remember reading where it's like maybe SPT should be willing to schedule updates in the middle of a segment and rely on the 2-week buffer. That's the other alternative.
Yeah. I think. I mean, that is actually from there, right? That's.
Yeah. I just read it. I just read it out there. I was like, I remember reading something along this line, but.
Oh yeah. So basically saying like, trying to say, oh, all events are in the same ban list was like especially folly this year, and so like instead of handcuffing with a timeline that was trying to align to the competitive season, it would be better to just go with how the card release schedule worked.
Yeah. Yep. Do you want to tackle this one first?
Sure. I guess like it's hard for me to not read this, especially coming from Cold Lava, and go like, this is like me, someone who's pretty sad about Ob, because it does feel a bit like Cold Lava, I know, is not as much of a sep head. Maybe this friend is a huge sep head, where it's like, oh yeah, two of the best decks in the format just got kind of chopped down, and it's not clear if they were 100% head and shoulders above everything else. Well, they were clearly quite good. It wasn't clear if there were tools for other decks to start to adapt to them or not. And now it's just like we'll never find out. And the people that enjoyed those decks kind of get told, no, you're bad for wanting to do that. And I think the feeling a bit like an emergency ban list is kind of even though I don't think it's not at all how I perceived it, I can kind of see why it has that vibe just because of how close it was to the release. So it's like there was a VP ban list released, and a month and a half later, there's the like competitive season ban list, and that is pretty tight on things.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing to think about. There's potentially I don't know how. So I will say the reason from the organized play perspective that I prefer these things lining up with the season is because it really, really sucks for TOs to not be able to schedule around these things. Being the TO that is schedules your event 3 months in advance, and then you discover with 2 weeks notice that or a week and a half notice that your event is going to be in a quote unquote dead meta, really it hurts the attendance of those events somewhat significant. I think pretty significantly. And it hurts players hype for those things significantly, which is a big part of why we were trying to keep events within an event class have the ban list be announced in advance. And it's in theory we could instead announce those ban lists in advance based on set releases, but that means we have to know exactly when sets are going to release 6+ months out when we're setting up the competitive calendar. The competitive calendar for 2027 is probably going to get set sometime in the next couple of months. We're hoping to do applications much earlier this year, so before Worlds. So in theory the calendar will be set before, probably quite possibly before September, and we would have to NSG I don't think can say, oh, we know exactly what week every set's going to release in 2027 over a year in advance right now. Maybe we'll get there someday, but that's kind of not where we are at the moment. And so aligning to something that is, considering that the ban list is more focused on competitive anyway, makes to me just as the more correct aligning of incentives. I don't know.
Yeah. So I want to break this down into a couple different sections, and I may need to pass it back to you to check on some bread that I'm baking.
Oh yeah, that was supposed to be. I just vamped for 3 minutes while we were supposed to be checking the bread.
Oh, I did check the bread. We got it's 195. It needs to get to 205, right? Internal temperature of 205, which I think is usually is another 3 to 4 minutes or whatever. So
okay,
in 2 minutes from now, I should go check again. So I want to tackle this, hit the first thing, which was them saying that they didn't really like the timeline constraints section of the previous ban list article. And I would like to know why. Is it the writing? Is it just the premise, right? I thought that the timeline, basically, I put a lot of thought and effort into the timeline portion, and I hope it didn't come off as complaining, because I thought that it was really important context to help people understand the decision and why we chose to make the decision, right? Yeah. To me, it seems like mostly the take here is that they just disagree with the outcome of that, and I think that that's a fine take, so I'm going to mostly focus on that part of the writing, just because I think that is that is what I think the essence of this take is, right? Where in these specific set of circumstances, it looks bad to align our updates, the ban list updates with the competitive season. And my first thought to this, more than anything else, is like, just because it felt bad here does not mean that it's always going to feel bad. There are trade-offs and downsides to all of these approaches, but I think it's important to recognize the benefits. So, Jeff talked about TOs and like the benefit it gives to TOs, but it also benefits players. Like players knowing when they can expect ban lists and have a sense of like when they can basically like practice on decks and not like have to question if a ban list is coming or not, I think is basically a world like that we should strive to achieve, right? With as little downsides as possible. So that's one of the reasons why, even though it makes our lives harder, actually, like it would just be easier to just see where ban lists go, or see where metas go, and then do ban lists accordingly. I think that there is a world where we can basically have the best of everything, where we get very good at making ban lists that are appropriate, and then you can have this kind of like cohesive season feel that is all in the same patch, and then you have like a nice switch up in between. I think that is not ideal for a set to come out in the middle of any competitive season, pretty much no matter what. And this year, it coming out in the middle of districts, just like it did last year, this like not like both of them had pain points is what I think I'm trying to say here.
I remember like part of why I was talking about like scheduling is hard. Like there was definitely a period of time when we were planning the competitive season and the SBT season for that matter, where it seemed like the release of Vantage Point was going to be much closer to the start of district season rather than like halfway through it, which like is part of I think why this ban list felt particularly painful. But
my bread's at 205. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, so, I guess I will also just quickly say like I think personally for me some of it is also like, oh man, this ban list hit some of my favorite decks, and like philosophically I don't know, especially seeing how we haven't seen much of the meta at all yet, but it's a little bit like for me it's like I don't know, like it's we've talked about this a bunch, so I don't want to like overbeat a dead horse. I think I'm becoming more and more on the like I probably would have let this cook, but I also get why SBT was like, we want to get the data on what it looks like without the two strongest things in it so that we can make adaptations from there.
Yeah, and look, there's always the world where we do a no update, and instead of this take, we could be getting the takes of, wow, I can't believe that Ob wasn't touched.
Yeah,
it was so clear in a way the best deck, and it's like, literally now just like every single person's playing Ob. I'm not even going to go to mega cities because I can't shuffle that much in person.
Yeah,
like there's always an alternative world out there.
Yeah, or like, oh yeah, Seb is eating up every corp that isn't Ob. Like, why'd you guys let Sebs live and ban an Ob card? Like, there's lots of permutations that are rough, and so it's we can never know the universe. I think it's like it's tough for me, especially if it looks like extremely early non-representative data is like you should just like the only faction is Jinteki. Looks a little tough, but I think it's like hard to know that that's actually true or not. I think it's most likely going to not be true, but it's definitely a little bit worrying.
So the one thing that I thought, like, one of the things that I don't want to just be like, well, we did what we did and we did what we had to do, and those are the only options available, right? So I want to, like, I mean, I read this question a while ago, and I was thinking, like, is there anything that I feel like I could have done differently, or like a thing that I didn't consider that I maybe should have considered as an option? And I think that given the exact circumstances, we could have had conversations about doing a ban list in the middle of mega cities.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have felt good for anyone, but like it wasn't a conversation, and like
Yeah. We could have
it's
we
right, and
there
so
could have
like
been a
that's the
conversation
thing that we could
between
have done.
yeah, there could have been a conversation between OP and SPT to be like, okay, can we balance megacities so that we have enough to get some good data, and then enough set in stone afterwards that we get more good data before continentals, and then announce it with enough time to let players know which side of that dividing line they're going to be on.
Right.
And it's like maybe
Yeah.
like it could be that that would have worked out and been good. It could be that like, oh, actually, honestly, like there's been one megacity so far, and I don't think there's another for like most of them are not happening for another month and a half. Like most of them are happening in June and July, not in May. And so like it might just be that like, oh yeah, we could there's just not enough weekends in the year to make that, or in the Mega States season to make that happen.
Yeah.
So
So SSJ Speed Racer, which we have a call from, it may even be the next one. But they're saying a couple things in the chat that I want to comment on. They're saying that they're a little bit confused about how Jinteki got away scot-free, right, when two of the four most dominant corp IDs are red, are red. I think that this is exactly the kind of thing where it's like Melius U was like more figured out and made progressions and got a lot better after the ban list. Not as a result of the ban list, just like because people still need more time to cook, and also because the set came out. Alco is being played like less than probably it was for all of the last year, but not
yeah,
because it
Alco.
was not good.
Well,
It's just like there's new things.
well, I'm not even sure, but I actually do think
I think
Alco had
Seb,
gotten hit pretty heavily by the previous ban list. With Sting, once
well,
Sting and False Lead went, like I think that deck was properly not good.
I mean that's true, but I think that when VP came out, Alco was still good, still worth considering, worth playing, but people were playing with other new things, right? People were experimenting, people were playing Melius U, which means that it's just like we don't have data, which is like a point for let things cook more, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's like why in the world would we proactively ban things that we don't have a good understanding of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is like you were saying that in the comment they were saying that you're kind of dooming about Seb losing Ashen, but they missed it a lot less than they thought they would. And that is exactly what I did while we were doing the discussions, and I tested it and I went, it's not nearly as bad as I thought. I guess this is fine to move forward with.
Yeah, I mean, brings me back to my original take of like this, like Ob gets like taken out back and like shot in the head. Seb gets a slap on the wrist, and like PD goes, "I'm sorry, what were you trying to do to me?" But we'll see how that actually shakes out as we get more Mega City data for sure. Anyway, we've got a caller question that I should get queued up. Give me just a second to try and get the tech to work. Oop. No, that's the wrong thing. Let's do it this way. All right, here we go. Cross our fingers.
Hey, Jeff and Safer. I was looking at the Eternal points list, and I noticed that Transfer of Wealth had been pointed to make it difficult for Crim to play 9 copies of Siphon. My hypothesis is that Netrunner is quite sensitive to having many copies of a redundant effect in the card pool, perhaps more so than games with mana systems like Magic, where there is natural competition in the card slots between cards of similar mana costs. Do you agree with this hypothesis? And if so, how has it affected your ability to design cards and grow the size of the standard card pool? And for bonus points, can you name a card other than Transfer that's currently legal in Standard that you wouldn't be able to print a similar version of because having double the number of them would be too much for the format? Thank you.
Cool. And I should have said that that's from Rohit, who did a very nice job of taking 2 shots in that question.
Yeah. And the second one was, I mean, both are good. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think this is like fairly fascinating because my initial reaction was no, like redundant effects are broken in every card game because you have consistency, and redundant effects allow you to break the like X number of card limit per
Hmm.
deck size. Like Netrunner, I do think has like some specific dynamics. They're a little bit unique, but the very first thing that comes to mind for me is like however many like 50 card, 40 card like lightning bolt deck or whatever before Magic had the concept of 4 max copies per deck, you know? Um,
Hmm.
or just when in like a Magic standard format where you have a lightning bolt effect at 1 mana and then another lightning bolt effect at 2 mana, you might play both of them just to have 6 copies. Um, like this kind of thing, I think is pretty big in
Yeah,
all card games, and I think
yeah.
that
A lot of like Magic red deck wins style decks are like, oh, I just have 5 different 1-drops that all will do on average this amount of damage across
yeah,
1 to 2 turns, and like the deck is just like, all right, I have enough redundancy to hit you, and it doesn't actually matter which of them I draw; they all work in any combination.
yeah. Like I think that in the kind of like Dude Basher games, the redundancy is I think a little bit less felt because all of the cards are actually really similar and do
Yeah,
very similar things. It is their stats that make them feel different a lot of the time. But like they all have like very similar outputs. And in Netrunner, because the system is so unique, you really feel like, oh, this is like this card is redundant. But obviously we have plenty of redundant cards. You have the X copies of Sure Gamble meme. Um,
yeah.
like we
I
have a lot of
that was actually
redundant
gonna
like
be
economy pieces.
that was gonna actually be kind of my point of like thinking about that. It's like, yeah, for like a lot of Dude Basher games, like yeah, cards have a stat and like they convert to stat on a curve, and also your cards drawn is like fixed in some amount of way. And like sometimes some of the effects you'll see that break the game is like, oh, there's actually too many redundant ways to draw that are all too efficient. But it's like I don't know. It's like almost when your card draw is very gated, as it is in many Dude Bashers. Like you have to have cards that are somewhat redundant, and also your cards are like output is always just going to be damage at some level. So every card has to be able to either prevent damage or do damage or generate you a resource. And so like there's only so many ways to do that to some extent. I know that's an oversimplification, I guess, but or not. I guess it is a huge oversimplification. I guess to me though, like the gamble, like there was a big period in network design where it's like, oh, we can't keep printing daily cast level economy cards, or we can't print
Mhm.
more, you know, companion level drip economy cards. Like there is some sense where like the economy cards, I think, are like I almost think of as being the more restricting thing rather than the cool splashy effects, like a transfer kind of denial. I'm thinking of transfer as I think a little splashier than I think it actually is. But there's like um,
I mean, it's it's impactful. It's impactful and it feels relevant. But like we were we when we were like balancing transfer, we actually thought that we could make it slightly more powerful and it would be like okay. But the entire premise was, you know what? Let's make it so that we can actually print other criminal econ denial tools,
yeah,
like and not have it. So yeah, like I mean, it is really, really funny to see transfer get pointed in Eternal. Like conceptually funny.
yeah,
It
it's
makes a lot of
conceptual.
sense.
Yeah,
But like I think it's actually less about the redundancy in that particular case and more the fact that like the game the game the economy of
eternal.
the game is important, and like if you can literally just drain that many more credits, it's going to break things, you know?
I think also for Eternal a little bit having a run event that gives a tag can be quite valuable. Like it's actually
That's
a
true.
confluence of different things would be my assumption in Eternal, though it's been a little bit since I've looked at that format too seriously.
Is Seb good in Eternal?
Uh, Seb is not so much, but Liza is.
Well, Liza
Um,
for sure.
yeah,
But
and
Liza's not benefiting additionally from the
well,
from
but
like the
Mars
tags
for the
you take,
Martian
right?
and counter surveillance sure are. So
Oh, sure,
being
sure, sure, sure,
making
sure.
6
Yeah,
credits and gaining a tag that's then going to get you an additional access, like all of that is
right.
good, right? So that would be that's my hunch as why more of why it's pointed. Though obviously the like my deck is account siphon, diversion of funds, and transfer does start to stack up. So it's like only certain corps are allowed to play the game if that's going to be a matchup that you
Right.
have to hit some percentage of the time. Um, yeah, what was the? Oh, I just had a thought on a
Are
non-economy
there
card. Oh, I get. It's actually. I think about like there was a period of account siphon where it was like, oh, I'm playing account siphon, same old thing, deja vu out of Anarch, and so I'm just turning all of my deck into a lot of account siphons. I do actually think like recursion
yeah.
is one of the places where in Netrunner you see it the like I feel like Netrunner has recursion from the graveyard from the heap or archives as like a more prominent factor of gameplay. Like I know it's a thing that gets done in Magic the Gathering all the time and gets done, but like I know I think it's like it's archetypal in Magic the Gathering when you interact with your own graveyard, whereas like in Netrunner like most decks have some way to interact with their already used cards. And the more of those effects you have, the more consistent and like repeatable your game plan becomes.
Yeah. I think so. The bonus question here was like, what other kind of card effect could we not print more of for redundancy? And I'm like thinking of just like a lot of things, and I think it's almost just like I think we're always kind of thinking about what is the appropriate threshold for this kind of output. So like
Yeah,
we can't print more twinnings that stack with twinning. Like you
yeah,
can't. We could print something that competes with twinning, but letting you medium dig your opponent is not something that we probably think is the most healthy for standard netrunner. So like, okay, multi-access, certainly we can print more multi-access, but we wouldn't want to make it so that you can like double and triple, quadruple dip on a whole bunch of things. Same thing
yeah,
with economy, same thing with draw.
yeah.
um
I'm even thinking like, oh, we don't want to print more futs, right? Like, you want some of
yeah,
your win condition card, like, maybe I'm trying to think of a better example. Like, we don't want to have Magistrate and Bologna. Like, we don't want to
yeah,
have NB and have a bunch of all of these stacking. Like, you touch an agenda and suffer effects that are all like that don't compete with like having. I guess it's the like you don't. What's I feel like most effects in Netrunner end up having this like, oh, we want them to define a lane and we don't want them to perfectly synergize, um, because
yeah, and like we
yeah,
want you to get to that same output or experience or mechanical like layer like multi-axis, but in a different way. um
yeah,
'Cause makes just makes the game more interesting and more fun and more textured. um like most archetypes should have multi-access. All archetypes should have multi-access. I'm gonna go with, outside of extreme examples, all runners should have and make use of multi-access in some way, shape, or form. But like how they do that, I think is the more interesting part. Um, right. And then it's just
yeah,
simply a matter of making it so that two different archetypes or concepts like doing overlap like in the same space, uh, making sure that that doesn't go past certain like upper bounds that we want for multi-access or economy or draw or recursion.
yeah, yeah. What was I thinking? Oh
Or
yeah, another
punishing
one. Like,
effect.
it's almost like I'm wondering like, oh, what cards do we want to print lots of duplicates of? And it's like there is some level of like econ does need to have redundancy in it, right? Draw needs to have some
for sure.
redundancy in it. But you do want but it's like, you know, outside of like the like basic economy cards, like almost everything else I think should feel unique to make it feel like a very like to have that card game texture. I thought of another. I was like, oh yeah, we don't want stacking different variations on Tungsten Tailor. So like we
Definitely don't want that.
We probably can't see any other flat global ice reduction effects that interact with Tungsten Tailor while it's in the card pool.
Nope.
Like that's just going to be a
Absolutely
thing.
not. Fuck that. I'm vetoing that immediately. I mean, like even like 5/3s, like a critical mass of 5/3s, like
yeah.
Even if they have completely different effects, we still, you know, like there's something to be said for, oh, here's like, you know, very compatible defensive 5/3s. If there's like 3 copies of those, okay, that's going to create its own form of problem. But I finally think I have an actual like, what card should we not print another of because it would be too redundant and too oppressive or whatever? I think it's measured. I think that's the actual.
Oh, that's a great answer.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because it's like measured and end of the line are actually both in the card pool, and like they're arguably redundant, but I think in practice they're not.
Nah, they're sometimes occasionally they might go into some of the same lists, but I think more and more it's pick a lane, and like that's good. I like it when there's like an end of the line list, and that feels different than a measured list.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and actually, I guess I'm thinking of like Mioshu and a Big Deal like are actually like they're both like, oh yeah, big money win, but they have a different texture, and so it's like, oh, there's more space there. But what you don't want to do is have like this synergizes with my Big Deal, or this synergizes with my Mioshu.
Right. And both of those are for influence. And
that's true too.
You can't combine these two because one of them is literally end your action phase.
Yeah,
that's a good thing. So it's like, yeah, we can print more like Punisher damaging stuff in Wayland. It just shouldn't directly synergize with like measured.
Right? Yeah. So I don't know. Part of me it's like, oh, I feel a little bit unsatisfied. So actually, it's like, oh, almost everything has to be slot restricted to some extent, and it's hard for me to think of like examples that stand out way above the rest. But I think the measured's a good one. Fantastic. All right. Let's get.
We should find our thumbs.
Yes, we should find our thumbs.
Okay, bringing on lost my thumbs.
Yeah.
For their question about 4/2s, which, if there was going to be a card type that maybe we should have more of in the game.
Yeah.
And you kind of can't have too much of it. Maybe it's 4/2s.
Yeah, agendas are like non-defensive agendas do seem like they have you can stack these basically infinitely, and it's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, lost my thumbs. Welcome back, and love to get your question.
Thanks for having me back on. I guess my question was just really about the HB 2-pointer agenda suite, and I can really just sum it up as the HB compared to the other factions just has less 2-pointers to play, and the 2-pointers that they do have just kind of feel, for the best word I have for it is jank. And I guess my question is that really just like Luminal and Project Vitruvius, like their legacy just kind of holding HB down as a whole, or is it actually Precision Design's problem, and would a good tempo forward agenda just be unprintable in HB because Precision Design will just lap the field with it?
So this, in your written question, you actually broke down all of the different 2-pointers by faction. So there's 5 in HB. You were gracious enough to include Mega Pre, and
it should be
like,
included.
No,
I
I think putting a 3/1 in your deck is not a thing that you generally like doing. Let me put it this way: if you have to play 10 agendas or like 11 agendas in your deck, but like you're mostly still going scoring 2 points, scoring 2 points, scoring 3 points, or 2-3-2 or whatever, I'm not going to consider that to be the same style of agenda suite. So I'm happy to say that HB has 5, Jinteki has 9, NBN 8, Wayland 8, and then 2 neutral ones. I looked at this and I was like, wait, that's crazy. In my head, HB had more 4-2s than like any other faction. And obviously that's wrong. That's not true. But because I play HB a lot and because I play Thule, I'm like, yeah, there's plenty of like viable 4-2s. Don't look, Thule did nothing wrong, or something.
Thule did so many things wrong.
I think that when I think of like 4-2s, I think if we're like looking at all of the different factions and all their different agendas, I think the number of playable ones are a lot more even, with I think Wayland being the most notable faction and the most like flexible one, and then Jinteki only recently kind of catching up to that level with like Lotus Haze being printed. And I think that HB, I think that Off-World Office has felt like a HB 4-2 for so long that I think that that seems more likely to blame than Luminal or Project Vitruvius.
Yeah, I was actually like, just for me, the answer of why HB's agenda suite is so bad is actually sort of a secret third option, which is just that Reg HB was so good for many years, partly because of Off-World Office, but even before predating it. So a lot of the design, this is like my bugbear that I love to beat, of like Borealis and Liberation both intentionally said, let's make some janky 4-2, some janky 2-pointers for HB. And so like that obviously hurts. And then I do think Vitruvius, like probably one of the strongest 4-2s ever printed, even though it was a 3-2, which like was a lot. And so like aiming for below that power level makes sense on paper, but Project Inkaton I think is just kind of a miss, though some of it is a miss because of the particularities of the format we're in right now, where HB is very operation combo focused, and so a card that cares about installing is just not particularly relevant. But
yeah, I think in comparison to the other dividends agendas, I think it's the second best one, which means I think it's like not that of a miss. Like off the books, I think is like, I think off the books cooks. You know, I think off
the books. I mean, I will still not like it as much as Atlas, but is a good.
Yeah, agenda. but like, okay, Atlas was also much better than Vitruvius, right?
I would say they were pretty close to equal, I think, but like, well, actually, no, that's not true.
No,
Atlas was better.
Atlas was like one of the best agendas in the game ever.
It was hampered by being in a worse faction. And so, like, in practice, Vitruvius was often an Atlas counter, because if you were playing HB, you drew your whole deck by the time you got Vitruvius counters, so it was, like, a little bit of the same card. But that's like a... You're right, that, like, Atlas is the better card.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I was like, what in the world happened between 2017 and 2023, in which somehow Vitruvius became a better card than Atlas? I could see it seeing more play or more success just because of the other stuff around it, but like,
yeah. And then
got to get to like Astroscript before you find better agendas than Atlas. I feel like.
Yeah. So like, I guess, you know, going back to your actual question about like, you know, why is HB being forced into so much jank? Like, yeah, some of it, I do actually think Off-World Office is a huge part of the issue there. I think PD is probably a little bit of the challenge, but I would not say as big a deal as Off-World Office was. It's like, you know, it's like right now a 4-2 scoring PD that like scores behind ice and like plays good tempo. Like if that came into the, like, it's just not that relevant in the meta right now. And I think actually I would be pretty pleased if that did come back, and I wouldn't hate it if HB got agendas even just designed to help that archetype specifically, of sort of a tempo single remote scoring deck.
I agree. Also, Architect Deployment Test, pretty good card.
Good card. It is a good card.
Good card.
Knowing the top 5, even if you whiff the install, is still something. It's got that going for it.
Yeah, I think it's just tough because it's like it is pretty limited. You have to be like you end up wanting to build your ice suite around it a little bit, and then you're like, oh well, now I'm adjusting an ice suite around a card that like I'm not even gonna score in half my games that I win, which is tough.
I think what it is that it suffers from the lack of the rest of the agendas, to be honest. Like, if you had basically a bunch of other options that you were very happy with, then you would have like your deck where you'd be like, oh, this is an ADT deck. Like, because of the way that it's leaning, it makes sense and it feels really good there, right? Versus having to like pigeonhole the agenda into a deck that may or may not want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because like there was definitely a period of the like Rush PD heyday where you played ADT as a 1 or 2 of.
Yeah.
And like it was totally reasonable and solid there. I don't remember the exact permutation of agendas that made that make sense. And yeah, I don't know. I always, Midnight 3. I look at all that list of like 2-point agendas HB can play, and I'm just like, yep, Midnight 3 Arcology. Pretty rough card. Ontological strategy defined. Project Ingatan. Yeah, Project Ingatan is probably a little bit more of like a wrong meta rather than like this card is fundamentally bad. I think that's kind of true for Architect Deployment as well. But like, there's not like when you do look at like the Wayland and the Jinteki 4/2s like or X2s, like those are built around exciting cards to do, and HB just doesn't have those at the moment.
Trying to find the 7th 2-pointer in an HB deck right now has been very, very challenging.
Yeah.
And you just look at like Jinteki, and it's like you could run the like 2 3-pointers and then 7 blank 2 3s in Jinteki, and that's a deck. Like that's your agenda suite right there.
Yeah, and then
HB, it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, and it's it's like Safer, like I think Safer missed the like there was a period where Jinteki was running unironic flower sermons, and like it was pretty good. So like I actually think Jinteki's like,
was it actually good?
Yeah, it was actually good. Now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well then it's like comparable to like Midnight 3 then, because
no, it's very different because
what?
Because it also protects your R&D.
No, what I mean is that Midnight 3 had a deck in which it was very good in.
Okay, I guess Midnight 3 was part of like a combo deck, right? Whereas Flower Sermon was like, oh, we're just going to play Reg Jinteki Glacier. Like, if you... It wasn't...
wait, what?
Yeah, you could just play... It was just played in Reg Glacier for a while.
Was it Ag Infusion?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Man, I would love to hear more about this at some other time because I'm so confused. I
will have to double check after this, but I'm pretty sure that was a thing that happened for a while. Those people just like, oh wait, controlling the top of the deck is good enough.
Good enough. What were the other options?
I mean, it might have been that you didn't have other good options. It was like,
okay.
But yeah, maybe I've got that wrong. But I will say chat is being quiet and not calling me out, so I'm going to assume I'm right for that reason. But yeah, I guess so. Lost my thumbs to assuage your doomer concerns. I think PD is probably holding back HB getting good X2s less. Like that to me is not the predominant thing. I actually think it was more off-world and historic HB power that has meant that HB is left with a dearth of like exciting X2s as the primary issue.
But just you wait. it won't be held back anymore.
Oh, this is the
I
fun
mean,
thing. I actually know
have
nothing
to
about
wait
what's
a
in the
while.
next set, so I can get my hopes up.
My fears were at least partially assuaged
No
because
comment.
when we saw Train, I was like, "That's a really good 3-pointer." It's a
Oh,
damn
yeah.
shame that we're not going to get a good 2-pointer, but then we gotta let them dream. That the surprise at the end there. So
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Gateway with
It's
something.
it's still just your classic HB running neutral agendas.
Yeah, there's just a small difference between Let Them Dream and Off-World Office.
There's the true.
All right. Well, thank you, Lost My Thumbs. We are already, we have a couple more questions we want to hit, and we are over the time we were supposed to go. So do we want to hit well, thank you for coming on. Any shout outs you want to give before we send you away?
Just shout out to the LMNOP circuit up in the Midwest.
Fantastic.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on again.
All right, I think we do this last one.
Yeah, we can make. Yeah, this can be a good last one.
Speed Racer. Yeah.
Let's hope I have the audio right.
Hey guys, my question is a follow-up on the discussion of tech debt from last week. It feels like we're reaching a point where System Gateway is being looked at with a very critical eye. R+, Off-Off, Cleaver, and Luminal have all been banned, and you haven't been shy that Seamless Launch and Buzzsaw are cards you consider problematic as well. A pretty significant chunk of the actually good, actually played cards from Gateway are being talked about as if they're too good, and I've got two questions regarding that. One, do the feelings around these cards have more to do with a shift in design philosophy, or is it just owing to the very different card pool we have now? Obviously, I'm sure it's a bit of both, but curious what your thoughts are. And two, given how many Gateway cards are either already banned or are seen as design mistakes, do you foresee a future where the set gets replaced? Where we get some kind of, revised system core, if you will? Hey guys,
Let's see. So I don't know which order to tackle those two things in. I almost might start with the second question about revised system core. I will say for me personally, it's not something that I would be very excited about because it is bandwidth that gets eaten up on cards that aren't super like, oh yeah, we're gonna re-release System Gateway, so now more confusion for onboarding people, and for entrenched players, it's we're going to take away some more of your toys and give you new underpowered versions of those toys, which is just a not very exciting package.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think it's something that can be explored. It's just like a thing that like doesn't get me excited, and it also is for me like, we had System Gateway. I guess it's it would make almost every third product or every other Netrunner release that NSG has done be a new player product, and at a certain point I'm like, okay, but we could do not new player products, right? We don't need to just keep revisiting the new player experience every time we do a set or every other year, because I think it was like it's System Gateway, then Borealis, and Liberation. To be fair, that's 2 in a row, but then Elevation would be a new player product. Vantage Point isn't a new player product, though it has a little bit of that feel to me, but I think that's me being very uncharitable. And then it'd be like, oh yeah, if we did a revised core next, okay, back to a new player product after 1 or 2 jumps away. And that feels a little sad for me as someone who like wants to get into the weeds and grow a card pool, where a new Gateway kind of would grow the card pool in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think that your assumption here is that it takes up a normal release or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's
which I think which is a fair thing to assume. But like, I think so. The exact question I think was, do we see a world in which this happens? And I think that like we can come up with a world in which that happens, certainly. But we need to kind of like address and talk about some of the challenges, right? So like, first off, you would need to like deal with this product confusion, right? Which is called system update, right? That seems fine. So you have to deal with product confusion. You have to figure out a way of like, let's say that there's I don't know, 20 different cards or whatever from like System Gateway or something like that. Is it like a brand new product? Like, that cost the same amount? Do like established players need to then pay like a full product thing to get, like, as Jeff said, potentially like nerfed cards that they're already familiar with to keep playing? Like those are, I think, like some logistical constraints that would need really solid answers for me to envision a world in which like this would be the case, right? That being said, as a game designer who is very much development leading, aka like balance tweaking, numerical leading, yeah, I would love to do it. Why would I not want to do it? Like, there's a saying that games are never finished, they're just released. And you know, you always basically like learn more stuff about the game that you made as when it gets released and over time. And yeah, like I would love to be able to take those learnings and lessons and to basically better the game as a result. I think that the reason for doing a project like along these lines would be that System Gateway is such a core foundational piece of the game, and the card pool is different now, which then means that you have these cards that kind of no longer like make sense for where the direction of the game is headed. And going back to your first question of like, do you think it's design philosophy, or
can I jump in for 1 sec before we go to that design philosophy question?
Yeah,
I think a world where System Gateway is never replaced, I don't think is realistic either. Like, if NSG is around in another decade, like, I don't think we'd still be playing the 2021 version of System Gateway. Like, I just don't see that. Even though it's marketed as an eternal product, like, it's not going to be the eternal product. I think, to me, it's the, like, talking about replacing it now when we still haven't rotated the first NSG product feels very, jump cart before the horse kind of, or like jumping the gun a little bit. But that's a whole separate, like, that's some of that logistic and feeling things. Like, Ashes is
the true NSG core set. That is the I think it's already, we've already passed the time where Ashes has been in standard and around in the card pool longer than FFG was printing cards.
Yes, that is true.
If I'm not mistaken.
Right. If not quite true, it's probably the longest outside of the cards that got reprinted in FFG's revised core set of cards that have like the longest legality for a card or something like along those lines. Like, it's released, Ashes Downfall released in 2019. We are still playing with those cards.
Yep.
So
we are approaching 7 years. Oh wait,
we've actually passed 7 years because it was.
Oh yeah. Oh no, we have. Oh, we definitely have.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I would like to see the game without Ashes, maybe without Borealis, before I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely ready to replace Gateway. Because I think both Ashes and Borealis, like, to go actually transition to the first part of your question, Ashes and Borealis to me are very much responding to the like, we're designed for an FFG, like, I say FFG, I basically mean a Rashida power level of game.
Yep.
And like, I think it leaves sort of an indelible mark on, and like System Gateway also designed in that period, right? So like they're all designed around a tempo of game that is just very different. And I think to get to that first question, like I do think like System Gateway was printed in part the way it was because like Cleaver was trying to, like, to my point earlier, like, oh, a thing I wouldn't like about the System Gateway is like, oh, just getting people cards that are worse than things they already have. Well, System Gateway had to answer that problem in 2021, and so Cleaver had to have a compelling use case relative to Paperclip, right? Uh,
Yep. And you see the downsides of that.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's like, oh, in the moment when System Gateway comes out, it's like an interesting thing to have happen, where oh, this card can be like you can look at a card and go, oh, maybe I can make a deck where this card outperforms the expected card, and that gives me advantages in certain matchups, and like that's cool. That's why cards release. This is also why rotation exists, because your context is always changing, right? And so like having a set that never rotates has a lot of challenges, and why I think it's like, yeah, calling Gateway a truly never rotating set is probably a little bit of a lie.
Yeah, I like Hearthstone. What Hearthstone does is that they have like a core set that they just pick and pull cards from, like, and they redo it like every year. Like, we're not a digital game, so we can't do anything remotely close to that. But I feel like that's like maybe like one of the Magic kind of had that concept before where they would print a new core set. You know, it was like core 2010 or whatever, back when Magic released like 3 sets or 4 sets a year, if anyone can actually remember that time period. But yeah, like the core sets as like a concept where they create this like foundation. I think they kind of have to be moving, living, breathing things. Otherwise you end up with what we're at right now, where they were printed like, we shouldn't be printing just like underpower cards. We shouldn't print cards that, like, I think it's a good thing that Cleaver was printed and had some kind of concept, or so, had a reason to be considered. I think, you know, the maybe better answer in perfect hindsight is, okay, maybe paperclip was never going to be like the correct thing for the game, and so maybe ban that and then print something at an appropriate power level for that. But all of this is trying to say that System Gateway can't be a forever product, I think, based off of the conceit of like card games. But like a when, a how, like, is not, I think it's a discussion and an argument to even be had if now is even a time to have a conversation like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like I could see a world where like, hey, you know, Ashes rotates maybe, and we have 2 more sets in the card pool, and like, you know, we kind of look at the card and say, you know what, we could actually let R plus off the ban list, or we could let off back off the ban list, and like, yeah, Seamless Launch and Buzzsaw are these cards that are perpetually dancing on the edge of being too powerful, but actually having cards that are on that edge of being powerful is like part of card games, right? And like, it's never, you know, going back to like the other conversation about like tech debt and whatever. It's like, yeah, you know, System Gateway has cards that constrain design space, but not in a way like it's up until like they have to put such a constraint that we can't print anything else in that space before it's like, oh yeah, they have to go on the ban list forever. And like, I think Cleaver is an example of that. Like, Cleaver just can never come off the ban list, right? You know, R plus
Cleaver's probably the single best one.
Yeah, it's like even though R plus is, I'm pretty sure, never coming off the ban list, like I'm less certain about that than Cleaver. Like, Cleaver is like fundamentally a design mistake. R plus was like feels like it was more card pool dependent. And like I know that while Luminal has committed not a single sin in its entire existence, it's never coming off.
Yeah, I think Cleaver should never ever come off. It doesn't make any sense. I think Luminal is probably the next card that I think doesn't make sense to come off. Because
design sensibilities. I don't actually think Luminal.
Yeah, like let's just print like other things.
Yeah, it's better to
like,
print cards that do stuff like have a output like Luminal, but numbers for that are better for the game, right? Like that's
and Luminal only came off the ban list a year ago, like when elevation, like when the big rotation happened, because like HB had like literally no agendas, like could
Yeah.
not function. And they needed something. And that was an option. R plus is okay. R plus is, yes, a power level thing, but the other thing is that it says the first time each turn the runner takes a tag, it can be from any source, including the runner's own card abilities. So what R plus does from a design constraint perspective is that it really hampers our ability to print cards that
But have
like self-tagging
runner
cards from the
tag as a
runner.
cost. Yeah.
Yes, it's like prohibitive, and that's like that's the real problem with it potentially. Like with it coming off, it's a lot. Like at the moment, I think it's probably too good power wise, probably, but like I think there's an argument to be made. Whereas like the flip side, just being like, oh, you're like, I just happen to like not really care about transfer is like, that's just kind of stupid. Like that's not good gameplay, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The
Like
fact
it's
that like yeah,
powerful, but it's not.
the fact that R plus
It's
just
not
kind of says, oh
engaging.
yeah, transfer sort of doesn't do anything. Like it's just +4 credits.
Yeah.
It's like it turns transfer into a kind of net. It turns transfer into a sure gamble, basically.
It's -1.
Minus
It's
1 for the
literally
corp
like
and then +4
-1
for the
corp.
runner. So it's like
Yeah.
for
You
2
have to
clicks.
transfer multiple times in a turn or whatever for that to like not like
Yeah. Yeah, whereas it's like for me, like the off ban, like I think it's like banning off gives space to print more tempo positive cards that are faction specific, which I think is like good. But it's like, okay, once we move to that, then we move the discussion to like Seamless and Buzzsaw, and I'm like, I think in practice, both of those cards, like I think those are, while treading on that like design problem space, I think we'll always have alternate targets when they show up being overly oppressive. Buzzsaw definitely being closer, I think, than Seamless Launch, even though Seamless Launch is the much more powerful, much more ubiquitous card. And maybe I have that wrong, but
no, I mean you're right. You're right. I think it's when the icebreaker dynamic is just so important in the game that like that's like Cleaver. I mean Cleaver almost assuredly would be too good right now if it was unleashed, but it's like it's probably sustainable. It's not like going to kill corporations if Cleaver came off the ban list. It's just the game would be a lot less fun. Like it the ice needs to matter. Ice really needs to matter in some capacity for Netrunner to be a fun game. And so like cards that like that that fly in the face of that or threaten that are a lot more wearisome than other cards. Yeah, and that's the reason why it's like Seamless Launch is the better card than Buzzsaw, certainly. But I think Buzzsaw is the one that has a much broader like impact on like how the game feels to play.
yeah.
Seamless still does like no advances.
Seamless is like a huge game warping effect. Like it is
Yeah.
on the scale of that icebreaker interaction. But it's like
it's close.
I would say, like, I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing, but it's like, you know, I guess I'm like it's within that order of magnitude of power level concerns.
It's within the order of magnitude. It is, but the funny thing is, like, yeah, it's in that order of magnitude, but also kind of only in that order of magnitude out of PD.
Yeah,
you know, like when you can just when you can recur them, like when you're playing 3x copies in LEO, it matters and it's relevant, but you actually have to like they're like limited resources, you know, and then it feels more like I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's in the same magnitude to me as like
I mean, you know, the funny thing
just
I mean, it's not actually the answer to PD, but especially with Melius U as well, I wouldn't be shocked if at some point we start printing more runner anti-corp recursion cards.
I actually had that thought like 2 days ago. I was like, can I just print something that removes things from the from archives from the game? And I was like, this is probably not a healthy thing.
Yeah, it's probably
There's
better,
probably
but like I do think it's like, oh, this is a runner card that like has a good effect, and then also has punish. Like to me, the like actual tech card version of this is like, oh, it just when the corp moves a card, moves a
Right.
card from archives, get this like silly powerful corp punisher effect.
Right. Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah,
So
because I would it would have to be into play or an HQ though, because I wouldn't want to punish spin. That's like one of the big things where I'm like,
oh,
let's not
I don't
punish
hate
shuffling back
punishing.
agendas.
I guess I don't hate punishing spin because I think you also do need to punish Moonpool a little bit. But like it could be as simple as like when the corp like removes cards from archives, sabotage 2. Like it, it's not enough to be like backbreaking, right? But
Right. Not sabotage though.
yeah, sabotage would be the worst possible trigger to
Not
put there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, not that one. not that one.
yeah, but yeah,
When you tried to put cards back into your deck that they milled, just mill some more.
yeah, exactly. It probably ends up having to be better to just generate value or something. But yeah, I think like
Yeah.
I guess it's like the problem with some of the gateway stuff right now is like, oh, it's like the recursion components are too strong or whatever. It's like, oh, that you can kind of try and address with some other countervailing forces. Like Helium for isn't a good attempt to do that, but like is an attempt to kind of gesture toward that. And like there's design space there, but like there was not design space around Cleaver, right? There's not design space. Like off was too good of a. I mean, off I think like genuinely like everyone agrees like why did we put 7? It's like, oh, we put 7 on this because at the time corporate sales team was played quite a bit, and that was plus net plus 7 across what is that, like 5 turns, and we're like, oh well, we got to make
Corporate
this
sales
card
team was
competitive.
10, right? It was 10 total.
Yeah, it was 10 total. I don't know why I
Yeah,
said
it's
7 net, because that would actually be 6 net, but whatever. If you're advancing at the fairway, and then also like Seamless was definitely missed a little bit. So,
All right,
yeah.
I gotta go to sleep.
Yep, you gotta go to sleep. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We will once again, please submit questions on the Discord. That's the best place to go and do it. If you want to call in, we love having people on. If you want to drop a voice memo, those are great too. And we'll take your written questions, of course, as well. And I think that will do it for us. Have a good night, everyone.
Buenas noches.